Thank you all for joining today. My name is Lewis and I sort of lead construction for Revisto across Europe. I've done a previous workflow or webinar about the 2D export workflow, and today we're going to go into a bit more detail about how we can use the 2D information within Revisto. So as I said, my last webinar showed how we actually export the data from Revit, or if we bring in information from PDFs, and that webinar is available on the Revisto website if you wanted to go back and have a look at that one as well. But today we're going to look at how we work with the 2D information. And most people with Revisto kind of understand that we work in the 3D side, but we also do a lot of work with the 2D side, and that's why I want to show you today is the different ways that we can use the 2D information to ultimately we can review the information in 2D, we can mark up and comment, and we can communicate those issues in exactly the same way that we do with the 3D models and the 3D issues that we typically are known for with Revisto. So we're going to jump straight into it. There is a Q&A button available to you. If you've got any questions, feel free to raise them on there, and if I see them pop up as I'm going, I might come back to them. Otherwise, I'll just save them up until the end and answer them there. And this webinar will be made available in sort of normally about 24 hours to everyone. So you can sort of download it and watch it again. So it will be available to you. So let's just jump straight into it. And yeah, as I said, feel free to ask any questions as we go. So in Revisto, I've got my 3D model. I've also got my 2D information brought in. And the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of how we review 2D drawings using Revisto. So I'm going to open up one of our drawings. So this is a typical structural drawing. It is obviously the relevant structural drawing for the model that I'm working with, so I can show you some of the functionality. And I just want to show how useful it is to have our 2D and the 3D models in one place together where you can work with them. So the first thing I want to show you, and this is a tool that most of you are probably familiar with, but you may not have used it in this way before. So I'm keen to show you how we can make the 2D and the 3D model work together, with sort of ease and really let you see the detail of the model. So we're going to click on the 3D overlay button here, and this is going to cut our 2D drawing into our 3D model. So this is a basement drawing, so that's why we're just seeing the basement area of the project. We can use the slider here to move the 2D plan up and down. So I'm just going to sort of locate it a little bit lower on the model, just so it's got a bit more context. What we also see here is that this is a structural 2D drawing, but this model at the moment is showing everything. It's got all the architecture and the MEP information. So what I can do here is that I can come out of the section tool. I can go into my object tool. I can go by links. I can turn off everything and just turn on the structural model. And I can now close that. And I can now, if I want to, I can go back into my section drawing. So now what I'm looking at here is the structural drawing overlaid onto the structural model without any of the other models interfering with what's going on. And we can continue to slide this down through the model to get more detail. So instantly now I've got a model and a drawing that are perfectly representative of each other. And if the drawing is cut directly from the model, I should see everything that I'm seeing in the 2D space also visible in the 3D model. So this is first of all, it's a really good way to check that everything is being cut from the model. And we can also start to see any discrepancies if we have them. Another useful feature here is that we can now, because we've got all the 2D information available to us in the 3D model, I can now start to check things that otherwise would prove a little bit more challenging and you couldn't normally do it in one space. So again, if I come out of my section tool, I can go into my measurement tool now, and we've got these spot levels scattered around the project. So I can now drag my spot level tool around. And what I can see now is that when I'm moving it over here, the drawing is telling me that this is at 64.8. But when I actually look at it in Revisto, it's showing me that it's at 64.9. So I can now really quickly and really easily see that there's something gone wrong. The model's either been updated and the drawing hasn't been updated to suit, or there's just a discrepancy. But also what this tells me is that perhaps the spot levels on the drawing are not actually sort of the smart spot levels that a lot of the software has. and it's actually been just added as text. So this is a really good way of seeing what's going on with that. And again, we can sort of drag this around and we can check other levels. So again, 64.9, I can come down here. So I can see that, yeah, the foundation is at 64.3. Over here, 65, 65.9. So straight away, I can see that with my level of 64.8, I've got an issue here in the project. So what we can do now, I can leave my spot level sort of pretty close to where the spot level from the 2D drawing is shown. And we can now raise an issue on this one. So we can now start to communicate the fact that there's a discrepancy between the level shown on the 2D information and the level shown in the 3D model, just by simply raising an issue. So we've got the create new issue button. I can locate this anywhere really on the plan where the 64.8 level is. And I can now give this a title. So we can say slab level to be reviewed. And we say done. And that's now logged into Revisto. And it's logged into Revisto in the 3D model with the spot level shown from Revisto, but also the spot level shown from the 2D information in the same place. So straight away, just by doing this, we're able to actually see if the levels are correct, if the text on the drawing is correct, all these discrepancies. And that's a really useful kind of feature to have that you don't get directly within sort of the 2D space. So if we were just in here, it's not actually possible for us to check these levels because this is just a 2D drawing. And if I was just in the 3D model and we didn't have the 2D drawing sort of shown in the same place. So if I just cut this down to the same level. So I could easily in here sort of start putting on my, my spot levels in the same way, but I wouldn't know what was shown on the 2D drawing. So by being able to overlay the two together, we've instantly given more sort of validation to what we're looking at, and we can actually check the 2D and the 3D. So the 3D overlay, there's a lot more benefits of it than just sort of a cool visualization where you can see the 2D. We can actually check both things together, so which is really, really useful. The next thing we can do within the 2D space is that we can start to measure within the 2D drawing. So we've got the ruler icon, and we can now start to measure information. It will snap 2 lines. So this drawing here, I know doesn't actually have the pile cap schedule on it. So I don't know what size specifically a P29 foundation is, but pretty easily I can just sort of start to measure this and start to check, and I can see that that's 1600. And I'm the structural engineer, and I know that actually a couple of these P29s need to be bigger. They need to be sort of the same size as a P1. So again, what we can do, I can delete that dimension, just come out of there, and we can raise an issue. So I can place an issue on my model. I can place it on this foundation, and we can say P29 to change to P1, for example. Can say done. We can actually go back to the markup, and we can actually edit the markup, and we can put some text over it. So we can draw over the P29 and just say P1. We can add a background. We can change the color, so we can make this sort of a little bit more. We can add 100% white background, so it covers up the information. And again, if this appears more than once, I can copy that and I can place it over here as well. So we've now started to actually mark up the 2D drawing in Revisto with comments of changing sizes and whatever we want to do. We've got all the markup tools down the right-hand side. So if I want to, we can then add a cloud around these components. So I've now sort of highlighted that. So it's now really clear exactly which 2 pile caps I want to change from their existing P29 to P1. And we can just say done. And that's now logged into Revisto. So again, I can go back to my first markup and see that it was P29. And then I can go to my markup view with all my extra information added. And now we can see that, yeah, these need to be changed to P1. And so this is now sort of exactly the same as your other sort of red line markup tools that exist on the market. This is the same as sort of printing out a drawing and actually marking it up by hand. But we're now doing it in the connected space of Revisto. And what that means is that we've got the issue tracker on the right-hand side. So we can now come in here and we can actually now start to set the priority, and we can say, this is a major issue, needs to be done by next Friday. And I'm going to assign this to Reese, and this is now Reese's problem. So he's now going to be notified within the Revisto, and rather than having sort of drawings floating around and printed out and emails or whatever it is, it's now all just stored in one place and easy to communicate with everyone on the project. So you're getting all the benefits of marking up sort of digitally, and you're getting the benefits of having an issue tracker. The other nice thing about this is that this is a 2D markup. So we've got a 3D switchback into Revisto, but we've also got a 2D switchback. So in Revit here, I can open up my issue tracker. I can double click on this issue. And what this is now going to do in Revit, it's just going to take a few seconds to load. It's now taken me to that same drawing that I've created that markup in. So I can then go into my model, and where necessary, I can come in here and I can edit the size of my pile caps if I want to make them into a P1. So it's really nice to have that switchback functionality, not just in a 3D model, but also so that we can switch back to the 2D drawings really quickly and really easily to save everyone a lot of time of having to scroll through a long list of drawings trying to find the specific one. So yeah, so again, lots of people don't know that we've got the 2D switchback. They all know about the 3D switchback, but we've actually got the 2D switchback as well. And one of the other big benefits of having the 2D information in here to start reviewing is that you can see that because the sections have been exported into Revisto as well, these are now live links to the section mark. So what we can see here is that we might have a detail going through the slab, and I can now just quickly and easily just click on my section head here, and it's automatically going to take me to that section in Revisto. So I can now see the details relevant to the area as well, so I can start to now looking at reinforcement details, and if necessary, I can come in here and start marking that up. So it's lots of functionality with the 2D side to review information, but it's all in one place. It's all linked together, so it's really quick and really easy to move between different drawings and different areas, jump into the 3D. And again, that's the other thing is that, well, the fact that we can come into the section, and then we can overlay that section into the model as well. So we can then start to review that section information inside the 3D space. So everything's all connected together. So it's really beneficial to start using Revisto for a 2D markup, because it's going to save a lot of hassle and a lot of time, because you can just be in one place to see everything. The next thing that I want to talk about is that we're not limited just to drawings. So in here, lots of you are going to be producing reports on projects. I don't actually have any specific reports, but I do have the Revisto user guide. So we don't support multi-page documents. So when you bring in a multi-page document, it splits up each page individually. But what we can do is we can set up a folder that is relevant to the document, and then you have each individual page within that document. So my Revisto user guide folder becomes the sort of the main document, and then we can click in and we can now start to see each page of the document individually. We can switch between them by using the left to right keys up here, and I can now start to review this multi-page document. We can come in here, we can look at things like the table of contents. This isn't interactive, unfortunately, but we can see things like what page things are on. We can then go back into here, and I know that I've got a comment that I want to make about phases in our user guide. So I've now gone to page 18 based on the contents, and we can now raise an issue in here. So I'm going to place this next to phases, and now I can just add text. I can add text anywhere on the screen, doesn't need to be on the page. So I can put it off to the side, and I can then start to say phases need to be reviewed based on Revisto 5. And we can now log that into the document. And again, we can assign this to the necessary parties. And we can say phases, page 18, review. And again, this is now logged in. I can assign this to the right people. So in this case here, I'm going to assign it to Dwayne The Rock Johnson because he loves Revisto. And again, we can now start to tag this with, this is just purely a 2D, and we can add things like report, for example. So when it comes to filtering out the issues, we can then start to use the metadata with the tags to just see all the 2D information and the ones that are based on reports. So it's not just limited to working with the 2D drawings. We can bring documents in as well. And when you're reviewing this, we can come back into, if I come back to say page 1, for example, if we turn the markups on, as we just slide through this document, I'll just jump to back to where we were. So page 18. And now we can see sort of like the markups and the comments. And this can then be worked in exactly the same way. So we can click on this, and then if I'm now back into the original document and I'm making the changes, I can edit this to say in progress or solved, whatever it needs to be. But it just means that, yeah, we're not just limited purely to 2D drawings. Anything 2D, reports, documents, all that kind of information can be brought into Revisto. And as I said, with multi-page documents, just create a folder for the document name, and it still then acts as kind of like a multi-page document. It's just going to break the pages up just because of the way that Revisto reads that information. So the next thing that we can do is that we can start to, again, like comment on the drawings. So I've already kind of covered this a little bit, but if we come into a section sheet, I might have a general comment about this drawing. And the key thing to be aware with actually here, if I go back to my, my basement drawing, the issue that I placed here, because it sits on the drawing sheet, it's connected in the 3D space. So we can jump to the 3D model to see where that is. So these are the foundations here, and I can go back to the 2D space. But sometimes you might not want the issue marker to show up in 2D because in 3D, because it is purely a 2D issue. It's only relevant to the actual 2D drawing. So in Revisto, if we look at the 2D drawings, if we click on this 3D button up here, we start to see these green spaces. These green spaces are how Revisto connects issues raised in 2D into the 3D model. But if we're to place an issue outside of any of these green spaces into the white spaces, then it knows that it's just a 2D issue. So if I show you what I mean, so on this drawing, I want to raise an issue to say that I want the detail level change from coarse to medium or to detailed, so that I can actually see the full steel dimensions. So I can place an issue. If I was to place an issue kind of on the drawing, this issue now on the left-hand side is connected in 2D and 3D, which is great. It means that I can jump into the 3D model. But in this case, the issue that I'm raising is not relevant to have the 3D connection. So we can place an issue perhaps to the side of the drawing. So we can place it like on the title sheet. We can place it off anywhere on the screen as well. It doesn't really matter. But if we place it on the title sheet, I can call this sort of general sheet issue, whatever we want to call it. And I can then add some more text to the drawing. And here we can say, change detail level from coarse to medium, whatever the comment is. So we've now placed that issue. Again, I can adjust my text height to make it a bit bigger so it stands out. And I can say done. And now you see on the left-hand side, this issue is no longer connected to the 3D model. And what that means is when you're flying around the 3D view, this issue pin isn't going to show up. And sometimes on a project where you've got a lot of issues in the project, it's important you don't have issues showing up that aren't actually relevant to the 3D model. So this is a really good tip to pull it away from any of the views. And now this issue purely exists in the 2D space with no connection back to the 3D, and it won't show up. So, and again, with this one, we can do exactly the same as we did before. So I'm now in here. I can double click on this sheet, and then in Revit, it'll just take a few seconds to open up. And then in Revit, I'm now on that detail sheet. So again, now if I want to, I could then start to select my my sections. And in here, these are all on a view template, but I can then start to edit these, and I can change my detail level from coarse to medium. And I can now easily make those changes back in the model. So the next time that we export the drawings, we'll now have the actual correct level of detail shown on these drawings. So again, it's really easy and really quick to communicate that information back into the modeling software. And that's not, I'm using Revit in this example, but this process works with any of the modeling platforms that we work with the 2D integration. So this isn't just limited to the Revit workflow. And then the final thing with this is, we've got a lot of companies now that are actually involving their sort of like document controllers into Revisto. And the document controllers are sort of controlling the flow of information between Revisto and whatever CDE it is that they're using. So another example of how this works is if we go into, back to the 2D space again, I can come down to one of my detail drawings in here. And in here, I've got an issue raised. And if I turn my markups on, I can see that there's a balustrade detail missing. And we want to communicate this back to sort of the wider team or make this an official comment on the common data environment. So an option that we have here, and this is actually sort of taken from, I think he's actually in the webinar as well. This is sort of a conversation that him and I had a few months ago, but within our stamp process, we can have like a document control section. And in here, we can now start to have a drawing status sort of stamp. So from a structural perspective, I might want to stamp this drawing as status B. What I've done in my stamp here is I've set this up and I've set the assignee automatically to be the document controller on the project or whoever's responsible for taking the information from Revisto and back into the CDE. So we can now be in our 2D space. We're going to status this drawing with a status B. It's okay to go out, but there's a few comments. So we're going to status B it. So I'm going to do a structural status B stamp. Again, I can place that anywhere, but it pays to move it away from the model. We don't want the status B showing up inside the 3D view. So I can just place that onto my drawing. So now Reese, who's the document controller, or Zed, anyone who's responsible for taking the information from Revisto into the common data environment, what they can now do is they're going to be notified that they've been have had an issue raised. So they can be in the issue tracker. I'm just going to add a stamp in here for, let's just say, document control. I should have added that to the tag. So we're in here now. So in the issue tracker, when they start up the project, they'll be somewhere inside the 3D view. They can go to the issue tracker, they can go to the filter, they can filter now by tags, and they can say document control. So straight away now it just shows them the status drawing. They can click on this and they're taken directly to that drawing, so they know which drawing it is relevant to. And what they now need to do, they need to print off this drawing with the markup so they can upload it to the common data environment. So how we do this is that we've got the export to PDF option. In here, we can choose to export with the issues. So I'm going to say my currently filtered issues and print the issues either as the markups or the pins. In this case, the markup is really useful because it's actually a sketch to show what needs to be drawn inside the actual drawing sheet. So we can now say, okay, it's going to ask me where to save it. I'm going to stick this on my desktop just for the time being. And we've now got a PDF that for whatever reason, that was my mistake. Let's do that one again. Let's do the print out again. And okay, save that. Let's replace it. So now we've got the PDF with the actual sketch on there. And what this now means is that we can now take this PDF and we can upload it against the original document on the CDE. So you've now got the original document and the document with comments. And this is a really kind of like useful process to take information from Revisto, where you've got all the live communication and the switchback functionality back into the modeling software, so they can go and make the changes really easily. But we can then still take that information out and put it back into the common data environment. So it's yeah, and the person that I was mentioning who I was talking with this about has now just popped up and said hello. So he is in the call. So it's good to know. It's and yeah, and so she's now actually asking a question about inserting sketches to the sheet to then be visible as an export. So at the moment we can't actually attach sketches. This sketch here that's shown on this drawing. So if we go back into Revisto and turn on my just reset my issues. So this is actually a hand-drawn sketch. If I was to edit my markup, this is actually drawn directly within the Revisto platform. This was done sort of like on an iPad with an Apple Pencil to sketch it out. But yeah, so the answer at the moment, unfortunately, we can't actually insert sketches directly into the 2D drawing. It needs to be drawn within the 2D space directly. But freehand, it's not ideal on a computer with a mouse. But we do have the dimension or the line options. So what we can do in here now, for example, I can sort of try and recreate this in a few seconds. So we can just Control C, Control paste this around. We can then start to sort of drawing a sketch within Revisto, but using sort of Linework. So we can then set this to be. So the markup tool just takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's fairly easy to work with once you kind of once you've done it a few times. You can start to draw some pretty sort of half decent sketches of what you want to see. Oh, that's didn't want a cloud, just drawn 2 clouds rather than lines, so we can put that back to solid. So yeah, this is just showing sort of, and again, I can zoom in to get more detail. So it's pretty easy to mark up the views and create a very similar kind of sketch. So that took like 20 seconds to do, and I'm pretty close to like my hand-drawn sketch. Again, we can say done to that. That's now logged in against that issue. And now if I were to export this PDF again, okay, let's just save that. And now when we print that out, we've now got both of those sketches sort of shown on there. So it's, but yeah, and then Shane just mentioned about the freehand on the iPad. So yeah, so if you're on a tablet or a touchscreen computer, you can sketch freehand. It's just, as I said, with the freehand markup that we currently have here. If you're trying to use it with a mouse, it's going to be not the easiest thing to draw. I'm not even going to bother trying to complete that on with the mouse, because you can see that it's not going to be super accurate or super detailed. But using the line work, using freehand, if you've got a tablet, you can pretty easily start to mark up some decent sketches inside of Revisto. So what I'm trying to say is that Revisto's 2D space is a really useful tool to do kind of all the markups that you're used to doing. Sort of either by printing out drawings and marking them up by hand, or taking them into PDF editing software and marking them up. You've got a lot of the same functionality within Revisto. So we've got freehand sketching, we've got text with leaders, just text, just lines, arrows, circles and ovals, polylines, rectangles. And within there, you've got different colors, different line styles. If you do polylines or rectangles, you can actually, and circles, you can fill the inside, so you can start to block out information as well if you want to. Lots of different options that you get with the 2D markup tool. But it's yeah, in general, the 2D side of Revisto is kind of underutilized by an awful lot of our customers. Yeah, Shane at the moment has been, who I've been working with, they're trying to push it quite hard on their project, and we've been talking a lot about the different ways and the different sort of options that you've got with the 2D space. So and yeah, and that was pretty much what I wanted to show with the 2D markup. It was quite quick, but as I said, this will be recorded. You can always come back to it. But if you have access to Revisto already, it's just worthwhile bringing some drawings in and just seeing how you get on with the 2D tool, because as I said, it has a lot of the same functionalities as other PDF markup tools, but with the benefit of actually connecting all the issues that you raise back to the original modeling software, but also through the issue tracker, so you can communicate all this information live. So yeah, so there's a few other questions that have been sort of asked. So someone's asked about inserting PDFs into Revisto. So there is a previous webinar available on the Revisto website that I've done. I think it was probably a few months ago now. But it explains all the different processes that we can pull information into Revisto, either from the modeling software or from PDFs, or using PDFs but connecting it smartly using documents. So yeah, so I would recommend to go back and look at that other webinar that was a lot more detailed about bringing in the PDFs for that side of things. Someone else has asked about publishing and printing directly to like BIM 360 or in our integrations. So at the moment that isn't possible. So at the moment you would need to export the PDF out as or export the markup out as a PDF, and then take that into your in your common data environment that you're using. So yeah, so that's the process at the moment with that one. I'm sure longer term that is something that we would like to get involved in, but at the moment that's not the functionality that we work with our 2D markups. So yeah, any other questions that anyone wants to ask? Feel free to jump in on the Q&A or in the chat function, either or. I'm looking at both. And as I said, this webinar will be made available onto. You'll be sent a link to it, and it will also be available on our website in sort of the next couple of days, I'd imagine, to come back and watch or to share with other people in your business who might find this useful. But yeah, that's it from me today. So I hope you all enjoy